everybody. Welcome to a very special episode of Rehash the Rolls. Coming at you live from my soon-to-be ex-bedroom. We're going through a move on a Friday. Yes, those are days of the week. And audience, just so you know, do not get used to facial hair. I hate it. My charge cord is packed in a box. So, announcements that we want to get through. Lydia or Patrick, we should probably have me know those.
Right, yeah.
In the future.
So on Monday, instead of having our typical different strokes painting stream, we're gonna have a game stream. Did we ever come up with a cool, awesome name for that, Patrick?
Distractions and diversions.
Distractions
or diversions and distractions. One of those.
Something. It's D&D.
Whatever Adam said. Yeah. Adam came up with the name.
A little too distraction to figure out the diversion.
Yeah. Or a little bit too diverted that we were never distracted. But yeah, so that is gonna be on Monday, same time as Different Strokes, and it's gonna be Patrick, Ian, Brayden, maybe me, depending on how things work out, playing through Labyrinthine, which is apparently a really scary co-op game. I'm terrified. I'll try and be there, but maybe I'll be too afraid to be there. So if you want to come hang out and have a fun time and possibly watch us all cry and scream, come for that for sure. I think that's really it. I mean, we have Ready to Roll next week, as always. Come for that, please, because it's really good.
Yes, very good. All right. Then announcements being out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this, again, very special episode of Rehash the Rolls, covering Eldritch Noir, the entire 5-show mini campaign. We are joined with 3 of the 4 players from the campaign and our DM. Again, unfortunately, Adam, who played Gene, wasn't able to be here tonight. But we also didn't get any questions for him. So, yeah, we should be fine to ask questions of those who are here.
Okay.
So, let's start it off with just a question for everyone. What was your favorite moment of the campaign?
Honestly, Gene didn't win, honestly. It was kind of an interesting feeling towards the end of the campaign, because I got the sense that it was kind of turning into this everyone versus everyone kind of thing, where we all had our own goals that we were all trying to accomplish, and it very much felt like Gene had the upper hand on everybody, and had something. And so the fact that at the end we were able to just look at Gene and be like, nah, you lose. And, it felt good. Because honestly, there's a little bit of time there where I was like, we're all screwed. Gene holds all the cards and there's nothing we've got on him. And so, but it felt good, particularly when we, instead of having to arrest Gene, we were able to just be like, he died. Yeah, we don't know, he got killed by this giant brain thing. So it's pretty good. It felt good. That was my favorite moment, honestly.
It was probably just being early Sev, interacting with almost anybody, and just not knowing how being a living being works. In particular, I liked I like the whole interaction we had out of character about buying a can of beans, and what Seb would do buying a can of beans. It was just a lot of fun to be a really wacky person in this kind of serious world.
And yet at the same time, a very serious person. Like, who he is and how he is insane, but his intentions and his, yeah, it's...
I'm very happy with the way Sev came across like that, because I was worried I made him too weird.
No, yeah, I mean, it was obvious that he was different just because of who he was, but that didn't change, like, him being a normal person in terms of, like, wants and desires. Yeah, it's awesome.
I don't know any people who want faces for their significant others, but okay.
Well, I mean, if your significant other did... Look, if I didn't have a face...
Yeah, I guess so. Fair point.
His salmon-colored suit was pretty awesome, too.
That was a great moment. I was really happy with the interaction between Vivian and Sev over that.
I appreciate how Vivian became slowly more and more assertive. Like, in the beginning, she's just like, yeah, you know, I'll do what you need, whatever. I'm here to, like, you know, be a witness. This is fine. And then by the end, she was like, no, I'm in charge. Okay? You do what I say.
That part was fun, because I realized at the end, after Jean died, I was like, wait a second. That was her whole motivation for going into this boss battle. Now she gets nothing. Again. She's ticked.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
That was well done.
I don't know if I feel like my favorite moment probably, honestly, was Jean going to, like, kidnap everyone at the apartment, because that was so not expected. Just like, yeah, I'm gonna go find out where he lives, and I can very much do that. Like, this is totally doable. And I'm going to get my boss over here, and we're just gonna do this. And it's like, oh, okay, this is where we're going. That was very fun to quietly panic and figure that out along with him.
It's one of the things Adam is good at, is doing things that his GMs aren't expecting.
Yeah.
I guess for me, as a pure audience member, as much as I run the show here, whatever, I think my favorite moment was Sev saying, you know, it's too bad Jean died. Like, right then I gasped audibly and just hands up to my face. So brilliant.
Sarah, did you say yours?
Actually, I think the part at the end where she got to tell off Detective Anderson was pretty fun.
He probably deserved it. He was kind of a jerk sometimes.
It's either that or shopping with Sev.
Good moment.
That was a great moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think my mom actually texted, like, the entire family during the show, and no one else watches it except for her. So they were all intrigued to this, like, what suit goes best with a silver skin tone or something, whatever it was that he said. And they're like, nobody else had any idea what it was, but I was like, yes.
The answer is salmon.
Salmon.
Yeah. Well, then speaking of Sev, and you were talking about early Sev. So this question says, you portrayed Sev as someone newly come to sentience. Can you describe what the background of that was and his emotional progression through the story?
Yeah, if it's asking, like, the background of Sev's story, essentially it's just that, imagine I would say like one of the robots at like a auto factory, that's putting on something for 20 years, just like doing that, and like a few years later, it just goes, I don't like this. I want to do something else. Or hey, my bosses are jerks. More specifically, in Sev's case, of he realized the police department was incredibly corrupt, and he just wasn't having it anymore, and so he left. And then it was kind of he kept on being a robot, but he had a robot with his own ideas. And the beginning of this story is a robot with his own ideas that now discovers what feelings are.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like session 1 was really where I cemented the idea I was going to have of Sev has not felt these strong emotions before. They've been like programmed to be right or wrong. And it was, I see this person and his wife was crying and now I don't know how to handle it. And then it became, now I'm really angry because these people are in my way.
Yeah. Now I could just have a poor memory. It has been a few months, but what was it that Sev did with the police force?
He was a all-around detective unit. He was designed to specifically be a field unit and combat unit. He was designed to essentially be thrown away. If a situation went bad, he could be on the field and really good at gathering evidence and figuring out what was going on, but then get into combat. He's not bad at that either, but it's also better to send out a robot than to send out an actual living being, was the police department's thought.
Okay. And did Sev have any like weird conflict of feelings about Commissioner Jeffries?
Yeah, we didn't get to explore that. He, in particular, had a huge issue with the commissioner. Like, there was a whole little thing me and Lydia talked about where it was like, he in particular had it out with the commissioner, and that was like the first time he was like, I'm just not doing this anymore. And the commissioner was like, you're a robot. And he was like, I'm not doing it. And so he left. And so it was going to be like, if they ever got to encounter the commissioner, it was going to be a big deal for Sev, especially being angry to not try to kill the commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So
now,
then,
given that he's essentially dead, yeah.
That's why I like add a little
is that so that was seen as a victory instead of like,
Yeah.
oh, I couldn't be the one to take him down.
Just the fact that he's gone was good enough for Sev, because he just saw him as a root of corruption.
Gee,
Gotcha.
he kind of was, because like he was, but he was also, you know, just an extension of the Elder Brain too.
Yeah. So it became.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how about we shift over to Sarah? This question is, did Vivian always have the large ambitions, like really making it big, or was she like developing those over time as she found new opportunities and whatnot?
No, she always wanted to make it big. That was her goal when she came to Shade City. She just found out when she got there that it was tougher than she thought it was going to be. And she was tired of being a hat check girl.
Yeah. But despite like having to be a hat check girl, that never really died or even like faltered. It was just like, we're going.
No, her dream to make it big was always there, but in the beginning, she wasn't willing to do anything to get there. If she'd been approached by Jean, I figured she'd been there about a year. If she'd been approached by Jean with that deal at the beginning, she would have said no. But after having been there for a year and constantly failing to meet her goal, she was then at that point ready to get her hands dirty and be a little nefarious to get what she wanted.
Yeah, that was something that seemed to evolve throughout the episodes. Like, when you were talking with Sev about oh, his goblin friend,
Gator?
the shady guy,
Gator.
Gator.
Gator
He
the
was awesome.
kobold.
Oh, Kobold.
Kobold.
Yeah.
I'm terrible.
There was a goblin
Uh,
involved. His boss was a goblin.
And but yeah, I think during that, Vivian was talking about, oh, well, maybe it's so criminals aren't always bad, and like, was that like a realization for her, or was it just like her trying to sense the legitimacy of like, what would people think of me doing this kind of stuff or something?
Right. So even though Mrs. Bailey and the people she had worked with at the Silverleaf were crooked, she didn't know that at the time. So she was coming to see, hey, wait, they were crooks and they weren't that bad. And this Gator person is a crook and he's not just like foaming at the mouth, terrible. And these guys in the alley, yeah, they're beating that guy up, but they just let us walk up and talk to them and then they're going to let us chat with him too. So she's seeing that, yeah, they're crooks, but they're not all super violent, murdering each other, terrible people. Maybe this wouldn't be such a bad way to accomplish my goals.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that again, with like a couple other things where we've already been talking about kind of character progression. Uh oh man, speaking of progression, blah, 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 I if Adam were here, I don't know, because there was so much of an act the whole time. It's like in the end he was content to leave and go live on a farm. Like, who was Gene this whole time, really? Oh well. But let's get with some questions. For Patrick. So Elhan seemed pretty set on arresting Delilah, making her face punishment, until Jean kind of stopped him. Which is also, of course, funny because Jean is the one who put pressure on you originally to do something about her. But what, like, was Elhan on the fence at all at the time that he was going, leaving the Elder Brain fight? Or was he pretty set already, and what like affected those decisions?
I mean, so he was pretty set on arresting Delilah until Jean said something, and he saw that Jean had lost all his cards, because that was legitimately the only reason that Elhan was going to arrest Delilah, so that way Jean didn't have another card in his hand to hold over Elhan. And so, yeah, that was it. And because because it was really interesting, because when he learned what Delilah had done, he had just come back from his conversation with Captain Alice. And so he couldn't, in Elhan's mind, he couldn't understand why Captain Alice did what he did. In his mind, Elhan was like, there's never an excuse for going outside the law and being manipulated that way, because, there's not an excuse. And then when it was someone that he actually cared about, that's when he was like, oh, that's why the captain did what he did. And so he, so legitimately it was the only reason he did, that Elhan ended up, giving Delilah a second chance was because Jean had lost all his cards. If Jean had maintained his power that he had at the end, the end of session 4, then Elhan never in a million years would have let Delilah go. And it's not like Delilah got off scot-free. She lost her badge. She had to date Elhan for a while. And so you know, he shouldn't get off scot-free. He still made sure that there was justice done, but I think by the end of the campaign, he was coming to the realization that there are more ways for justice to be done than kind of like, than the law. That, the law is, while the law is technically justice, it's not always merciful.
Right. Oh. While you were talking there, I was just thinking about, so you were saying that kind of made you see, oh, okay, that's why the captain did that. Do you think anything then happened later with Elhan and the captain?
I like to think that Elhan maybe took the captain out to dinner or something and apologized and said, I understand why you did what you did. Not giving any specific details, but maybe something like that. He still would have wanted the captain out of his position, though, because Elhan does feel like there was a distinct difference between what the captain did and what Delilah did, because Delilah wasn't being pressured into the actions. Delilah made her own choices to go and do what she did, whereas the captain had all this outside influence on him that in Elhan's mind, it was just dangerous to leave the captain in his position when he could be easily manipulated by an outside force. Whereas, with Delilah, there was a chance that she could exercise her own agency and come back on the right path. And Elhan didn't want to end up in the position that the captain had been in, which is why he would have arrested Delilah, because he didn't want to be in that position with Jean. So.
Yeah.
But he didn't have to do that. Thank goodness, because Jean died.
I actually find that very interesting because, like, being the person who was in Delilah's head, I feel like probably a few years down the line, she would have probably legitimately fessed up to things, like officially to authorities, because it was so extremely traumatic to her to realize that she became a bad guy and really did something really bad. So I wonder how that would have actually shaken down, of just like, oh yeah, this stuff that happened a few years ago, that was my fault. And people realizing like the possible connections and things that might have existed between her and the rest of the party, specifically, Captain Anderson at that point. So obviously we can't like figure that out and figure out what exactly happened, but that's an interesting thing to think about.
Would have been a lot of paperwork for Sev.
Yeah. I also think, like, because we talked about at the end that, like, Delilah would have been working with Sev. I feel like she probably would have hated it, honestly. Yeah. She would have maybe done it for a while because she felt like that was a way to kind of pay back what she'd done. But she probably would have been tortured by it every day of just like, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not a good person.
Yeah, speaking of, I was thinking about, for you, Lydia, you mentioned Jean going to kidnap those people. I'm sure him later killing his boss was a bit of a shakeup. Mm-hmm. What was your original, like, vision? Like, obviously you wouldn't have step-by-step planned out, but like, how did you think relationships were going to work out between people, and what, if anything, changed in terms of key characters in the story?
Well, I didn't think that Jean was going to be such an extreme outsider, because part of character creation is, like, it was discussed that Jean and Elhan would be like, like Jean would be his contact, like a criminal informant, and then, like, I guess because of the way that I set things up, instead of it being like when he gets nabbed and Elhan being part of that, it being later, like he's already been collared and brought in, that then changed it. And so I'm very surprised that went that way. But because of Jean being such an outsider, that actually twisted stuff a lot. Like originally the entire focus of the campaign was just going to be the case, and the end was going to be like Delilah's the bad guy, and she would have been like, no, you can't take me down, I'm the only person who's ever done anything, everyone else like pretends to try and then they don't do anything. It would have been a big old like angel fight sort of thing with that. But because he like went to kidnap everybody, and they had that showdown where he was like yelling at her like, I'm trying to help you, why do you keep attacking me when I'm trying to help, and like turn over my boss to you, that broke through to her afterwards, after she calmed down, of just like, I am a little bit out of control, that like the bad guys are like thinking that I'm crazy now, that Tina in the back of the car was in a lot of danger and she did not do anything to help her, that the people who are being targeted by the criminals are not getting helped by her. And that was the impetus that got her to confess to Elhan. And like the Elder Brain was like always in the background of just like, that's kind of like that lore background of like, this is why stuff is going on, and like maybe that'll come up a little bit. So I was able to bring that more into the focus when that became apparent. But yeah, it was supposed to be a much more small scale story. You weren't actually supposed to legitimately save the city.
Shuck dying.
Gotta aim big.
Yeah.
What can you do?
I know. When a brain comes out of a lake at you.
Okay, I just gotta talk about this real quick. When they were like, I guess we'll accept, and I was like, as me the player, I was like, no. And then as Sev the character, I was like, no.
Yeah, Sarah, like, what was up with that? Just like, oh yeah, I guess we'll give away our sentience to this thing.
I have only played limited D&D, so when these bad guys pop up that everybody else knows what they are and what their stats are and stuff, I'm just like, I don't know if this is like a minor person or like the big bad. And I've had a campaign once where I didn't realize that the big bad was the big bad, and my character just charged and went for them right in the beginning, like this low-level character, and I barely survived. So I was kind of relying on my other castmates to be like, okay, so yeah, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna, we're gonna do, okay, we're doing the thing. Jean says we're doing the thing, so we're doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in Adam's defense, he's actually never, like, he's played a lot of D&D, but he's played a lot of homebrewed D&D, and in most of my worlds, Illithids and Elder Brains aren't a thing, so he didn't know what an Elder Brain was, and so after the fact, I was like, if you'd actually gone through with it, you probably would have been mind controlled, and we would have had to kill you. And he was like, I didn't know that. So Adam didn't even really know what an Elder Brain was, because he plays a lot of homebrew D&D, not
yeah. And I mean, in character that makes sense too, of just like in that moment, because like he was kind of aware that Sev was around, and I think maybe Elhan had sent a message at that point to one of you.
Yeah.
But it was like, it seemed like the plan was, okay, we're gonna not get killed right now, and we'll regroup and figure things out later. Because this is not what I was like. Jean's very much a planning sort of person. He wants to know exactly what's going on and like have everything under control. And at that moment, things were out of control. So I feel like it made sense in character for Jean to kind of go with that, and Vivian being unsure as well for her to go with that too.
Also knowing Adam and seeing the wording he used in that moment, he said we want to go down. So I think he was mispicturing a little bit what the situation was. He was assuming that there was like steps to go down towards further into the brain and like meet more things. But that, that just comes from knowing Adam and paying attention to the wording he was using. So I don't think he was actually like legitimately trying to be like, all right, cool, let's shake hands with with the psychic devil and make a deal.
It was a great moment to look at the two other DMs and for both of us just to be like, like I saw Patrick's face and it was just like, I was like the same way. I was like, oh no.
And I try really hard to not have those kind of reactions because I try really hard not to metagame. But at that moment, I was like, oh crap.
Yeah, that very quickly could have turned into an unwinnable situation.
I do have to ask, Lydia, did you choose the Elder Brain because Sev had it, because it was interesting for Sev to fight an Elder Brain, or were you just like, Elder Brain, and then Sev's also here?
No, so Commissioner Jeffries was actually just like a thing forever. Like when I started imagining the world, it was just like, oh my gosh, mind flayers can totally be around the world. Like that's cool. I'm totally into that. I'll have that be the thing. And then when I was also creating like the different factions, like the Gold Wings, the Regalia, the Jade Fist, and like all these different groups, I was like, oh my gosh, can you imagine mind flayers in trench coats, like being like men in black and like showing up to people's houses mysteriously for like nefarious reasons? I was like, that's really cool. I'm really into that. And then I thought further, just like, okay, then they would be all controlled by an Elder Brain, right? Elder Brain can kind of do whatever it wants. So that could be like the influence. And I kind of had pictured at one point that that the Dom was going to reach out to you guys once he realized that you were trying to get rid of the issue with the Lunfemage, because it was making too many ripples, that like the rich people were going to start being like, oh, we don't want to use your drugs anymore, like people are getting sick, this is really weird, and it was going to throw off the Elder Brain's whole thing, and it was going to try and like get you guys in to do that for it. But then once Delilah like had her whole emotional crisis, I was like, no, this needs to be the thing. And so it was, and then it just kind of was like, oh yeah, the commissioner is a mind flayer, he's probably totally controlled as well, like that's totally a thing. So it wasn't because of Sev. Elder Brain was a thing from square one. It just wasn't the big thing.
The Elder Illuminati.
I don't think I've ever actually written in any of my notes the word Elder Brain, because I was so afraid that Nick would see my notes like just out at some point. So it's only referenced as the EB, like ever. Like I'm pretty sure I never wrote it down.
I don't remember seeing your notes at any time, but at the same time, EB does stick out in my head for some reason.
No, there's definitely been some times where like you've come up to me while I'm working on stuff and you're like wanting to talk to me and I'm like, okay, and I like minimize my window or whatever and it's like, hi, hey, can I help you?
But yeah, most of the time I don't even realize those are your DM notes or anything. It's just like, that's paper, it has words on it, and that's a screen.
What else do I write about?
Melania.
No, that stuff is all only in my brain or on Discord messages to Pat.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. How about we go back to Ian? So, Ian?
Yeah.
Where does all the stuff go that Sev eats and drinks?
So this is actually a discussion I think me and Lydia had it at like 11 o'clock at night because I thought about it. I was like, what happens with that? Essentially, it's because he's a magical construct. All that stuff that goes in there, it gets filtered into a magical pool that kind of does give him some energy, but it's more so just like, oh, Black Pit, just stuff goes away. Because he is filled with magical energy, so it is kind of feeding both into that and into nothing.
I've never had to think about Warforged so much.
They're the coolest race. Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of like, how would it make sense for a Warforged to be a normal living thing? And like eat and drink, and so that technically it could, but also what makes sense since it's a robot.
I did love that moment when he asks Ava to go to dinner, and I realized like, oh, she doesn't actually have a mouth.
Yeah.
She legitimately can't eat or drink anything. She doesn't have a mouth. She's just got like a grill. Like, oh.
Just shove it in.
Yeah, like through a cheese grater or something and it gets stuck in the holes. Yeah.
She could still drink. That is the one thing. She could
Maybe.
still drink.
Not cleanly.
No. Yeah, that was kind of the idea. Is it's just like it feeds into a little bit of the magic, kind of like the human body.
Right, yeah. Well, and relating back to Lydia was talking about how Delilah would probably end up hating it, but how would Sev feel about working with Delilah?
She would feel bad for Delilah, mostly because she would have to put up with him, but also because he is getting more in tune with his emotions, he realizes that she's not happy. And so he would try to do things to make her happy. Because simply put, Sev is just a nice guy at the end of the day. He tries to be nice. And so he would be like, here's this case I think you'd like. It will pay more. Here you go. He's like, I'll take the one where I have to crawl in the sewers. Don't worry.
I think,
I don't
honestly,
feel it.
I really do think if that hadn't happened, she might not have gone to jail. Because I think what would have happened had she been kind of left to her own devices after, I think she would have gone back home. Because, like, Vivian, she's not from Shade City. She's from, like, out in the country. From, like, Illinois or whatever. So I feel like she would have gone home. And in doing that, she might have not been thinking about things as much, and she might not have fessed up to it later. So she might not go to jail.
Yeah.
So it's your fault.
Well, it's funny because initially what I was going to do after he said, well, maybe you could work for Sev, I was going to have Sev rejoin the police force with Elhan. He was gonna be like, oh, you have he's like, well, you have an extra badge, don't you? And it was going to be him kind of trying to realize that maybe he could do some good again. But then he was like, oh, I was like, it'd be kind of crappy if he told Delilah, hey, you could work for Sev. And then Sev's just like, I'm closing up the shop.
So then maybe after she goes to jail, would you maybe have done that then?
Maybe. Sev might have joined. Or at that point, I mean, he would have been, married to Ava at that point. Maybe he would just been like, I can rest on my laurels.
For eternity.
Yeah. Well, he would eventually have to go back to work. You can't retire. You can't retire if you're never gonna die.
I actually debated offering Sev a place on the police force, and then I was like, nah, Sev would hate it. I don't think Sev would want to be part of the police force again. And that's why I decided to be like, hey, maybe Delilah can go work with you. Because originally it was just going to be let Delilah do her own thing and offer Sev a place back in the police force. But I was like, nah, I don't think Sev would accept that, so I didn't even go that route. Good to know great minds think alike.
Yeah, I was like, it'd be a great moment for Sev to just be like, I know it's a rough time, but I see you have an extra badge. Do you need some help?
Yeah, that would have been a good moment.
More than one extra badge. So many people in the police would have gotten.
Right, but he physically had one. There was
That's true. In his hand at that moment.
All right. Next for Patrick, we touched on this a little bit, and I know you talked about reflecting on the captain, but were there other things, especially about Delilah, that went through Elhan's head when she was confessing?
I'm not quite certain I understand the question.
So what was Elhan thinking as Delilah confessed to him? Sorry.
No, you're good. I mean, honestly, he was just thinking, oh crap. This, that was it. Because I hadn't ever mentioned it to Lydia, because by the time we got there, it's kind of like, whatever. Because I didn't have the names for my contacts, right away, and so, but when I, read the name Delilah Banks, I just thought in my head, Elhan probably has a little crush on her, and that was it. That was the extent of that. Didn't mention it to Lydia at all. Just thought that's the thing. Never thought it would come up, because I didn't expect Delilah to be a bad guy. but that was, yeah, so it was just, I mean, there wasn't anything crazy. It was oh crap. And then all the thoughts that I ended up having about Captain Ellis, and being like, well, this is a shame. This is why Ellis did what he did. I understand now.
Was it really off-putting? Because, like, when he asked her out at the end, like, oh, are you going to break up with your boyfriend? She's like, he wasn't really a boyfriend. Was that, like, off-putting at all for him?
A little bit. But I guess, but in hindsight, I was like, okay, now it makes sense. She was just, and I'd remembered I remembered she'd said something along those lines in the 4th session that, he wasn't really a boyfriend. He was just this guy I was using to get to this thing. And so it was just kind of one of those things that like just slipped my mind, and so it came out in character.
Who do you think broke up with who at the end?
I think it was mutual, honestly. I think it would have been mutual. I think it would have been Elhan seeing that Delilah was never going to really be happy, and Delilah seeing that Elhan was miserable because she was miserable, and they both just being like, because I'd imagine, I mean, at least in my mind, I imagine they both would have really loved each other, but it would have been one of those things where it was just like, we really love each other, but we're not happy together, so we should probably just call it quits. And so so I imagine it was a mutual thing rather than one person being like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I would imagine that like Delilah would never bring it up. Like she'd be miserable, but like she would care about you, and also probably to some degree feels like she owes you, which is never a good thing. You do not owe someone a relationship, audience. But so I feel like when Elhan would bring it up first, and she would be like probably resistant, but in the end definitely on the same page. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Elhan would have wanted to make it clear that she didn't owe him anything, that it was like, look, particularly if he got to the point where he felt like she was sticking around just because she felt that she owed him something, he would have been like, that's not what I want.
I don't know if that would have been exactly it, because I feel like there probably was a bit of chemistry between them while they were working together in IA, and like she was only dating Terseal because he had access to the amulet, like the talisman at the end. So I feel like she would have, in outside circumstances, probably would have been really, really happy with Elhan, and like really would have enjoyed that relationship, and not necessarily feeling like she owed it to him, but more like, he likes me, he shouldn't. I'm not worth that. But I don't want to ruin this because I do like him a lot too. That sort of thing.
And there's just a point where, in my mind, and I'm sure in Elhan's mind, where it's just like, I can do all in my power to convince you otherwise that you're worth it, but if you can't see it in yourself, then I'm not gonna sit here and tell you something that I know that you're never gonna believe.
Mm-hmm.
So
ditch her and go for Tina then.
Yeah, and Elhan probably would have like thought about it for a while. Like, I was thinking about it, I honestly probably would have been like, he probably would have just like run into Tina in like another bar and been like, hey. And honestly, it was probably the fact that Tina was also an ASMR, and the kind of like the reminder of Delilah that would have had Elhan be like, pursue that kind of a relationship with her.
He's got a very specific type.
Yes, Elhan is type.
Well, for all of his white knightness, you gotta have some shining light there.
Exactly.
All right. Now, Sarah, we talked a little bit about recognizing the kind of complex nature of criminals. But at the end there, Vivian seemed unworried, if not eager, to have dinner with like the top brass of criminals. Uh, was that an act? Or was she at that point fully okay with, yeah, bring them all on?
I don't think she fully realized that they were going into an actual battle. She saw her chance to have her audition with the Dom, you know, her chance to get a job at one of the bigger lounges and be a star. So that little part of her brain that was like, no, things could go wrong. There could be fights. She said, nah, it'll be fine. This is my shot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess like there wasn't a fight with Dom. But so like she wasn't worried about like just kind of the moral quandary kind of stuff there.
No, at this point, she had decided once she took the dress, when she stole the dress, she was like, okay, this is it. I'm a criminal now. Of course, she had some lines she wouldn't have crossed, like she wouldn't have murdered a child or something, right? So there were still some lines she wouldn't have crossed, but at this point, she's like, okay, yep, I'm gonna be a criminal. Let's go do this.
And then I'm pretty sure you ended up with Ayana's house, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Just like all her stuff. So like you weren't exactly a criminal at the end, but you were very criminal adjacent. I mean, I guess actually that is another question of like, yes, the Fortuna Nera got like different management and stuff, but those sorts of places are very much a draw for sketchy people. Would Vivian have like leaned into that after and been like, yeah, like I'll totally like do that? Or would she have tried to keep it very above board?
I think once she decided to cross that line, it would have been a lot easier to decide to cross that line again. So I don't think she fully returned back to keeping her hands clean. I don't think Detective Anderson cured the city as much as he might have thought. Not as long as Vivian was still there.
That would probably, I could see that helping a lot, like the kind of personal relationship there with eventual Commissioner Anderson. So I guess in the end it was Vivian became the mob boss.
Oh. That's the end.
Oh yeah.
Well, he didn't want that one captain in because he'd shown that he could be corrupted and you could use his kids against him. And he would have turned Delilah in because she could have been used against him. But the thing is, Vivian now had dirt on Anderson that she could use against him. So...
And then how would that have worked out, like, after he got together with Tina, then?
That might have made her hesitate, because I decided Tina was, like, one of her only friends in Shade City. So she would have hesitated to do him a lot of harm once he got together with her.
I wonder how that dynamic would have gone, because, like, when she called you and you had that conversation on the phone and you were kind of like, you know, I might be kind of going in that direction. That really scared Tina. She was just like, I don't want to be involved in this so much. So I wonder how that would have continued to go down had it been clear to her that that was something that Vivian was involved in. I guess we'll never know. Until we do Eldritch Noir Season 2.
I was just thinking about how, like, what would you think of that relationship going forward? Like, what do you think Vivian would be thinking about that relationship? Because
She might
Tina
not-
did kind of say at one point, like, she was not as cool with the bad stuff as Vivian.
Right. And now that Vivian knows that, and what she had seen, what Elhan had gotten up to in the name of curing the city, it's okay to cross that line while I'm trying to get rid of all the bad guys. And then once I've gotten rid of them, then I will go back to being completely uncorrupt. So Vivian has seen that, and she probably wouldn't have been entirely happy when him and Tina got together, because she knows how Tina feels about all that corrupt stuff going on.
Yeah. Just now I'm so interested in like how this would all go down, because I feel like Tina would have been really annoyed at Elhan at first. Because they were
Probably.
they were like flirting it up, and then he disappears for like years, however long he's dating Delilah, and just like, oh hey, I remember, you're cute.
To be fair, it's not like Elhan got Tina's contact information. Didn't try very hard.
Yeah, I guess.
But
Wait, no, didn't he give her his number though? I guess it's on her then.
be on her. Yeah. Is it by it might yeah, so
She could have asked
Who knows?
Seb. He had Seb's card.
That's
Mm-hmm.
true. Who knows? I mean, it kind of worked out in the end, I'd imagine. Yeah.
I mean,
Who knows?
it's-
I mean,
Yeah, this
Tina's
was one of
really
those
not okay with
things
bad
that-
guys either. Like, Jean was trying to, like, convince her that he was, like, okay, when everything was going down in the car, and she was like, no, dude, get away from me. He's not into bad guys either.
That's at least that's the thing, the impression that Elhan and I got with Tina, is that Tina was just kind of naive. And while Elhan wanted to be on the right side of the law, Elhan wasn't naive. Elhan knew that sometimes you have to get a little bit dirty to do some cleaning, you know, and so he definitely wasn't naive, but Tina was definitely naive, which is probably why the relationship ended up working out, is because she was naive enough to not be able to tell that Elhan was actually desperately in love with someone else.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Elhan still would have cared a lot about Tina, but he never would have forgotten Delilah.
Yeah. And then 30 years later, when she gets out of wizard jail, he dumps Tina and goes back to Delilah.
No, Elhan probably wouldn't have done that just because there was so much bad blood between him and Delilah at that point.
I don't think there would have been. I feel like she probably would have been at peace at that point. If it was from him to her, then maybe, but yeah. I don't think she would have.
Well, bring it back to a question. We talked with Lydia about her side of bringing in the Elder Brain. Players, did you have any theories leading up to that, like what the end game was going to be? And how did that all change and feel when you saw an Elder Brain rising out of the water?
I expected less of a physical thing and more of a godlike being. Of
I know
like
what an Elder
actually.
Brain is.
No, but something like we physically would have been unable to fight, maybe seal away, but like actually kill. I felt like that's where it was leading, was something in this garden was more powerful than even the city itself. And
Yeah.
so I expected Sev to have to die at some point in order to stop whatever was coming.
I was expecting, you know, particularly by the end there, I was expecting some overarching powerful being. I was expecting more along the lines of an archfey, looking at what the Regalier was. And then it kind of, you know, but like, so but when it was an Elder Brain, it was a surprise, but like, it was like, okay, that's still within like the area of what I was looking at. So like, it was a surprise, but not like, oh, wow, this came out of nowhere. but still very interesting.
I didn't know what to expect. I was just along for the ride.
Hope it was a
Well,
good ride.
I suppose, yeah, Patrick, you're probably a bit more insightful than me, having been a DM for so long. Because I was just like, oh man, they're gonna have a big fight with the Dom.
I expected the Dom to be in the fight, so I was kind of surprised when the Dom wasn't. But so that was interesting. It was fighting the Dom's wife instead of the Dom, but
Not that you were really fighting the Dom's wife. You were just fighting whatever agents of the Elder Brain were nearby.
yeah, that's fair.
Which, by the way, Elder Brain also has people outside the Regalia in, like, the Gold Wings and, like, the Jade Fist all over the place. So, not specifically just them. That's where it was, like, specifically rooted the strongest. But yeah, had more than just them.
Well, yeah, Elder Illuminati.
Yeah, for sure.
There's all these different competing factions, but in the end, who's getting all of the goods?
Yeah. I mean, heck, there were probably people in, like, the government that it had control of.
It had the commissioner, so
Yeah, because I mean, for an Elder Brain to establish a psychic link with someone, it doesn't have to be nearby, and all you have to do is, like, be asleep, and it can establish a psychic link with you. All it is that when you wake up, you're aware that it has a psychic link with you, and you can, like, try and break the link. That's why I never did that with any of you guys, because you were not present problems for it until right there at the end, and there was no, like, sleeping before that happened. But yeah, so there were definitely people who, like, never went anywhere near the Elder Brain, that it was just like, I want that one, and just, you know, nabbed them in their sleep, do kind of whatever it wanted, as long as it's within, like, 5 miles or something like that, I think.
All right, we are going to go just a little bit over because there are 2 more questions that I really want answered, and I get to do that as the host. So first, Ian, as I said before, like, the whole turn with Jean and all that was my favorite moment, and one of the big parts of it was just, like, you know, just before that also Sev arguing that they should revivify Jean, and Sev, like, coming in immediate, like, Sev jumped in when there was that clear and immediate danger, right? So what happened? Sev hated Jean.
It was a big realization for both Sev and I guess really me as a player, which was Sev realized that Jean wasn't born evil. As people aren't born good and evil, they choose the path they go, and Sev realized Jean had a legitimate reason why he chose the path he did, and a legitimate reason why he hated Warforged, and he could respect that. Not that he necessarily loved Jean after that point, but he also understood that Jean deserves more of a second chance than he got. Whereas he, just like he was made to be a killing machine for the police force, Jean was made to be this criminal scum in Shade City. And if Sev could give him another chance, he would. And also with the whole jumping in thing, he was not about to let his new friend Vivian be taken over by some weird creature.
Fair.
He might have let Jean just accept it if he was like, what are you doing? Like, this was your decision. But at that point, he was like, Vivian, help me pick out clothes.
He looks down at himself in the salmon suit that he's in.
And so a big part of that was Sev just realizing that he judged Jean harshly, just like Jean judged him. and so he deserved to be the bigger man and give Jean the benefit of the doubt, essentially. And to give him that second chance. But he was fully ready to run him out of the city if he tried to argue.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's I don't know. To me, it's really awesome how in such, it was a shorter campaign, but there was so much growth for everyone. It was a very character-driven and character-developing story. And so that will bring me to my last question, because it was such a great experience. Lydia, where did this come from? Like,
What do you mean?
it's so out of left field. Like, not like I could not find examples of people trying something like this kind of a setting.
So it came from so I really love Brandon Lee Mulligan from Dimension 20, and there was some podcasting.
We were talking about it.
Yeah, he did some. Yeah, he did some podcast with Matt Mercer a couple years ago where they were talking about creating a campaign setting, and he mentioned some world because when he was in college and young adult, and he still does it a little bit now. There's a LARP camp that he was a camp counselor for, and he would run tons and tons of D&D games for all these teenagers a lot. And he mentioned a noir setting, offhandedly, of it's always gray, it always rains there. There's some magic curse that got put on the land and always rains there, and it's noir or something. And he didn't go anything further into it than that, I'm pretty sure. But I was just and so that was something that was just in my head 2 years ago. I really wanted something that was very, very different, very technicolor and more modern, but I didn't want it to be modern day, because I know that is done a lot. So yeah, it was very much Brandon Lee Mulligan inspired. I will say that he is a very big influence on my current DMing style. Yeah, but I really spent a lot of time thinking of specific challenges for each person and things that would come up. I really appreciated the fact that the party did split up so much, and that they had their own lives and jobs and houses and stuff, so I could just be this would be a great time for a psychopath to walk through the front door. That happened to nearly everybody, I'm pretty sure. They were cornered by some crazy lady. They're always girls. So it happens when you have a female DM. All the bad guys are women, or nebulous brains. But I really like doing that to people. And it's really fun. And noir really lends itself to that a lot.
Yeah. Well, I believe that I speak on the behalf of all of the audience when I say that this was an awesome journey, and to the DM, to the players in the game, it was phenomenal. I had such a blast with this. So thank you all for playing. Thanks all for being here tonight. Again, Monday, we're gonna have a new distractions and diversions.
It's a D&D stream. Yeah. That's what you're very much used to. Come for it. I guess I could give a teeny little teaser for the next side quest coming up. We're hoping to start it sometime in early to mid-June. We have most of the cast figured out at this point. We have the setting figured out. All I will say is that there's a lot more fur involved.
That couldn't be misinterpreted by anyone.
I mean, you can interpret it any way you want. This is the internet.
Hello, internet. Thank you for being here. You guys have an awesome rest of your week. I know we will, because we get to move on Friday. See you all from the new place, and have a great night. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.